This is the Kenny and JT Show on News Talk 1480 WHBC.
All right, so here's your update on the Cleveland Browns coaching search. They still haven't hired a coach. Hell, they haven't even met the Rooney Rule qualifications of hiring interviewing in person 2 minority candidates. All right, so they're way behind. Baltimore Ravens, they interviewed 2 minority candidates. They found their head coach. They hired him. Who else in the division is looking for a head coach in the AFC North? That would be the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, have they met all the qualifications needed so they can hire whoever they want? Let's find out by going to the hotline right now. And we bring in the outstanding columnist, podcaster, Steelers beat reporter. You can follow him at Tim Benz PGH and also check him out at Trib Sports and Fox Sports PGH on Twitter. He is Tim Benz. Tim, how are you today?
I'm doing all right. How's it going out there? Maybe the minority candidate that could be hired by the Cleveland Browns is anybody willing to talk about the job. That would definitely put them in minority of apparently any and all coaches, regardless of race. At this point, I would think.
Well, we found out today that Udinski did not cancel his in-person meeting, so that was a positive step for the Browns, and we'll see if he ends up getting hired, but they still have to, like we said, interview in person 2 minority candidates. So Shieldhouse is expected to be one next week, and then somebody else. So my question to you is, as I look at the list, the Steelers are reportedly interested. How interested are they in Nate Shieldhouse, who the Browns have some serious interest in?
They do have interest in him. The extent to which they are interested in him compared to Chris Shula, I really don't know. The limited amount that I've seen of Shieldhouse being largely those videos that were posted online of him explaining his role as the pass game coordinator. He seems like an impressive guy. You can see how he might hold a room, even though he's very young and doesn't have much experience. I mean, they hired inexperienced guys before in Knoll and Cowher and Tomlin, but they had, I think, longer resumes of at least being either play callers or position coaches of import than a pass game coordinator title like him. So I think he would really have to convince them that he's more right than other guys that they've already talked to, that especially when you talk about guys like Weaver. Apparently Shula's really good at owning the room as well. Yeah. Maybe there's some genes there, who knows, but he's going to have to stand out above and beyond, not only from a scheme point of view, but also from a command of the coaching position point of view, because not even being a coordinator at this point at the NFL level, I would imagine would be a strike against him.
Tim, this is all about candidates, right? And it's really amazing to me. When Jeff Hafley was here at Ohio State, he was a defensive coordinator. I was shocked that he went on to Boston and ended up being a head coach here at Boston College, wherever it was, ends up being DC at the Green Bay Packers. Now he's a head coach of the Miami Dolphins. My real question to you is this: as it pertains to the AFC North, how surprised are you that the last man standing is Zach Taylor of the Cincinnati Bengals?
Well, he actually had that pass game coordinator job for the Rams at one point, didn't he, under McVay? So I guess that's the magic ticket. It is surprising. I think we talked about that the last time I was on with you guys. And, my grand scheme for this all to come together, and my chaos theory that I'm rooting for, or was rooting for, was that all the AFC North coaches would shift teams, and then Zach Taylor and the Bengals would go 17-0 and win the division. But I guess that can't happen now. Hafley was a name that actually got a little bit of buzz here early with the Steelers. Like, people sort of rolled their eyes at it here and said, I don't know what's so impressive about him. He was kind of on the fringe to the fans, and then there was some grumbling that they actually might have liked him more than the fans and media gave it credit for. And he just wanted, I guess, to take the job in Miami because he turned down a couple other it sounded like he could have had a second interview here in Pittsburgh. And that might be a blessing in disguise if that really was the choice of somebody there in the front office, because I don't see that as being all that special of a hire. So the fact that he's got a gig somewhere else isn't bothersome to me.
Tim Benz is our guest. You can follow him on Twitter. Real simple, at Tim Benz PGH. You can get the latest on all things Pittsburgh sports and more. Tim, who is the front runner? Is it Chris Shula? Is it the local guy who has a Super Bowl championship under his belt, who interviewed for a second time, Mike McCarthy? Or maybe there's a wild card candidate?
I don't know if it's fair to say that Shula is the favorite, but they seem to be waiting for him,
Right.
We didn't hear how it went with Weaver today. This is I can't really just say it's all about art, because Dan was obviously still very much at the forefront when Tomlin was hired. But, he thinks like his dad thought, and he's never said anything to the contrary about how impressed he was with Mike Tomlin's interview. It was Mike Tomlin's interview that won the day there. It was, for a while, the perception was just which one of our own assistants do we want to give it to between Russ Grimm and Ken Wisenhunt. And when Wisenhunt saw this thing dragging out and the Cardinals' job was still out there and he wasn't sure he was going to get it over Russ, and he knew that Tomlin was in the mix, he just jumped. And, it was Tomlin's interview that won it. So maybe we haven't heard yet how Anthony Weaver did today, but apparently that's his strong suit as a communicator, as a potential CEO type. It's certainly not the stats of the Miami Dolphin defense. Nothing impressive there.
Right.
It was better last year, but quite frankly, he would have had to really blow over himself today to stay in the mix, I would think, because they do like Flores as well, and he got the first crack at it. But they are waiting, it feels like, to talk to either or both of these Rams candidates in person one way or another after Sunday.
Could it be possible that they would like to have Rams defensive coordinator Chris Shula as their head coach and Nate Scheelhaase as their offensive coordinator, which they could offer him because that would be a step up over Rams passing coordinator?
I don't like that idea, honestly. I know that's been bandied about quite a bit.
Yep.
A lot of people in Pittsburgh love that idea. I think it creates for a weird dynamic. They would both be first-time guys in that role. It would feel like thing one and thing two to me. Like the offensive guy in charge of the offense, the defensive guy in charge of the defense. Who's really going to be the coach? Did the head coach get the job by an eyelash, or did he blow the other guy away? How much of a thumbprint can the new OC then have if he really was a distant second and he's just kind of coming along for the ride? I don't know. Then there's also the variable, if you're Scheelhaase at that point, like what if you get Mike LaFleur somewhere else, and then he can move up and be the pass game coordinator with an actual quarterback and an actual offense? Would you be better served for the next coaching go-round if you stay with the Rams? I get the concept. It sounds good in theory. I just wonder how it would play out if that really happened. It seems a little messy to me to try to get that Ram stack, as people are calling it.
Tim, let's talk about needs of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Sort of like the Cleveland Browns, we're still kind of searching for our next quarterback. There's no way they're bringing back Aaron Rodgers, is there? I mean, or is this a package deal with we're going to try to get him to come back and go get Mike McCarthy? Does that make sense to you?
No, it doesn't. Honestly, and I wrote about that this week. I tried my best. I squinted to try to see it, how it would look if it was McCarthy here without Rodgers, and I actually liked the picture a little bit better. Mm-hmm. Bringing back McCarthy to the NFL after his absence, and I think you're kind of just going from what had become one mediocre Mike to another. Constantly it was McCarthy's resume that was compared to Tomlin's around here, and you could always split hairs between the two. It would feel very much like a continuation of that, and it certainly would if the quarterback was still here.
Right.
I'd almost be more intrigued if McCarthy came on his own and they gave him Will Howard, or they gave him QB draft choice X, or they swing a trade for a quarterback that maybe we're not talking about yet because we haven't gotten out of the coaching cycle and into the free agency trade season. Like I would be more inclined to be okay with McCarthy if he didn't come with Rodgers at this point, because I'm just tired of trying to squeeze blood out of a stone after the last, 11 games of 2024 with Russ, and then these 17 with Aaron Rodgers. It's gotten a little tedious to see what that kind of offense looks like, where the entire goal of it is to get rid of the football as fast as humanly possible so the quarterback doesn't get hit.
All right, so have the Rooneys evolved? And here's what I mean by that. The three previous coaches dating back to the Nixon administration, right, were first-time head coaches, were assistant head coaches elsewhere, were in their 30s, were on the defensive side of the ball. Is that still the recipe they're going to use because it was successful for them before, or are they realizing that, okay, the NFL has changed since, the old man was in charge and they went that way and offense rules the league now?
Well, if they wanted to, they could have just outbid the Ravens for Jesse Minter, who comes close enough to checking all those boxes. He's a little older. He's 42, not 35 or 37, but close enough. I liked him as a candidate for the Steelers, to be honest with you. I wrote about that today, too, at Trib Live. He was, if they were going to go defense, he was the guy I wanted more so than Shula, to be quite frank. He never got beyond the video interview stage, and maybe that's because they got a hint that he didn't want to come here and he wanted the Baltimore job, and he had an inside track of the Baltimore job, and they didn't want to pick up any sort of vibes from him that he was getting state secrets while he was interviewing here before he went and played, coached against them. That could have been part of it. But there was just never a lot of helium around Minter here. And I thought he was the perfect guy to not only check those boxes, but do so with a purpose beyond just, well, we did it the first 3 times and we were lucky each time. That would have been a purposeful hire. It just would have been more coincidence to me that that's how it would have gone, especially if he could go get himself a good offensive coordinator. I do think there's a mold there to that. Obviously, the guys that they're talking to, while maybe a few years older than Noel, Tomlin, and Cowher, all do fit those 3 major categories of being first-time head coaches, former defensive coordinators, relatively young, mid-30s, I guess early 40s now as we slide the scale up a bit.
Yeah.
But that, let's put it this way. I think 5 of the first 7 fit that category. So they seem to want to go down that path, but I think they're willing to be talked out of it. And if they weren't, then what was Mike McCarthy doing in the building?
These young candidates, I think a lot of them are a stretch because there are so many availabilities.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't ever recall 10 openings in the NFL. Some of these guys I've heard of, others I've never heard of. Is there a candidate that comes out of left field that nobody's heard of that may end up being the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Is it a college coach possibly?
Maybe.
Tim?
You know, Cristobal got mentioned by Brian Baldinger today. He's the only guy to say that name. If there was a college coach, I would have been more interested in Freeman, but he doesn't seem to have any interest. The local yokel contingent, go get Signetti because he was born here and at. He didn't want to leave Indiana, understandably. He's never had any interest in the NFL. So those are the only coaching college guys that I think would be bandied about. And this is as much talk as we've had about a college guy because Baldinger said what he said about Mario Cristobal. And I guess Baldinger's got a pretty good relationship with Omar Khan. So people are connecting dots there and thinking there might be some fire to the smoke. But I don't know that to be the case.
All right, one last rumor.
And the other guy I'll say is maybe Clint Kubiak because we've heard about Clay. He's been on the periphery a little bit too. They haven't said anything about Clint. I don't know if it's because they're waiting or what, but I would not be opposed to a Kubiak. Give me Clint, give me Clay, hell, give me Gary as the quarterback if his arm has anything left in it. I'll take that at this point. But I think there might be something to his name after Seattle this weekend too.
How about one last rumor? And I know you talked briefly about maybe bringing in a free agent quarterback. Justin Fields, I read. There's no way they're bringing back Justin Fields, is there?
I can't imagine why they would, especially now that Tomlin is gone and Arthur Smith is gone. There's no attachment to bringing Justin back. I don't think that Omar loved him so much that they would feel the need to do so. And that landscape is so wide open right now because we don't know what the staff is going to want out of a quarterback. I mean, the only thing we can really draw a connection to there is McCarthy won a Super Bowl with Rodgers, and that's it. As far as when you're connecting dots beyond that, I don't think there's many to connect.
Tim Benz, our guest, talking what the Steelers are targeting as far as their head coach goes. How long do you think it takes for them to get this done? Will we see things speed up after the games are played Sunday, especially if the Rams get knocked out? And even if not, there's that week you get to talk to those guys. So could we see this by the end of next week finished?
I could see that being the case. If they do settle on one of the Rams guys, they probably won't say it until, after the Super Bowl, if they're still around. If they settle on one of the Rams guys and they lose, then yeah, it could be done early in the week. With the weather being a potential factor, getting in and out, there's some conversation that maybe they'll fly out to LA to talk to them, whether they win or lose, just because that's where they'll be, and it'll be easier to get it done that way. So that's a possibility. I really don't know how it will go because of that. But my guess is you won't get you could get an announcement if it's not one of the Rams guys before the end of the Super Bowl, sure. If they are inclined to take one of the Rams guys, then you'll know by flipping a coin between the two of them, because everybody else will be gone and the Steelers will not have announced anybody, and it'll be a deal that's sort of a handshake. We just won't say it until the game's over.
All right, last question with you, Tim Benz. We appreciate your time. What's been the reaction of Mike Tomlin stepping down the way he did, and the stories that have leaked out from his meeting with the players the final time?
A little bit of melancholy, I guess. For as much as people were clamoring for change, it feels funny when it happens, especially because for as much as people were clamoring for change, you never thought it was actually going to happen, because there was no indication from Tomlin that he was going to step down, and there was no indication from Art Rooney II that he wanted to fire him. Although I will never be convinced that the contract extension wasn't at least a part of this. It's a little, if you look at how Tomlin answered the last question he's ever going to answer as a coach in a press conference that I asked him, which was, as far as next year, do you think you have a foundation next year where maybe you can go one step further than you have over the past, what's been 9 now? He gave sort of a nothing response, but he answered in the affirmative that he thought there was enough here to win. So I don't know if that was him kind of blowing a kiss to the locker room on the way out the door, and he already had his mind made up. If you listen to Rondé Barber, he knew in advance of this year, for crying out loud.
Wow.
So, and Jay Glazer is making it sound like it has been a done deal for a little bit. So I don't know. I guess there was a little melancholy just because it did drive home the point that a coach that started off with so much promise in his career didn't deliver the goods close to as much over the last decade and a half as anybody hoped.
Tim, we always appreciate the time, the insight. We'll see what happens, which one of these two teams, Browns and Steelers, hires somebody first, and we'll keep each other up to date on that. Safe travel, stay warm and safe this weekend. We'll talk to you down the road, all right?
All right, maybe we'll touch base again whenever we figure out which coach it is.
Yep, sounds good, Tim. Thanks so much.
All righty.
Tim Benz checking in with us from the Steel City, columnist, along with the podcast and radio stuff that he does. You can follow him on Twitter at Tim Benz PGH.